Once again, Grinding Gear Games is proving to everyone that they are in fact the best game developers, period, and they are showing everyone how it is in fact done. A new patch will be coming out soon that will fix a lot of the concerns people are having with things like the Trial of the Sekimas, also endgame content and mapping, getting one shot consistently, and even buffing quite a few of the other classes as well as abilities in the game. Let's go over it and see what's going on. They are mentioning that they will be adding the capacity to fast travel between checkpoints within an area, as well as adding many more checkpoints to areas, generally at all entrances and exits to areas, meaning if you find these first, you'll be able to instantly travel to them and continue exploring. That's honestly huge. There's a lot of really small hidden areas inside of most maps. People want the actual maps to be smaller. I don't. I like the exploration aspect. I've also liked to go through and fully clear maps. That's kind of like what I like to do in the first place. So having these checkpoints is going to be a nice thing because I don't have to worry about having to backtrack and things along that nature, as well as mobility skills basically just being very minimal right now in the game. So it's nice to see. They'll also be making passive point respeccing cheaper, especially at higher levels. That's going to be amazing, especially for the ability to go through and try out different builds and trying out different things as you are playing, or just fixing your character in general to optimize. It had a relatively aggressive curve, getting more expensive with each character level. We have flattened the curve so it doesn't exponentially grow as much. This should generally result in approximately 40 to 50% less gold cost for respeccing between start and middle of endgame progression. Since they are going to also be nerfing a lot of skills and abilities, well, basically one button builds in my opinion, this is also a good sign so you're not completely bricked. However though, if you are in endgame, start saving your gold just in case. For Trial of the Sekimas, players were finding Trial of the Sekimas particularly frustrating in close range, so we reworked how honor damage scales when in close range, as well as fixing an important bug that was causing players to take far too much honor damage from damage over time. If you have a Thorns build, you are 100% done. This hopefully will fix that. Honor damage now scales down based on distance to the enemy. When in close range, you'll take 35% less honor damage, tapering off as you are further away from monsters. Good. I don't want to get shot off the screen and just lose honor all the time. Nice. Good job for melee. Fixed a bug where damage over time was dealing thrice as much damage to honor as intended, and fixed a bug where honor resistance was only applying to 2/3 of that damage. This was confusing for us too. Dot damage was being dealt 3 times more than what was expected. You gotta love it. Skitter golems no longer use basic attacks and instead now just explode. That's good because you now have the ability to just roll away. Serpent Clan's burrow and ambush attack now has improved visual telegraphing and cannot be used from as far away, which is good. The better I can just see things, the better the game will be. Volcanoes created by Rattle Cage's Fisher Slam now last half of the duration, which is great because less running around is going to be better. Endgame and monster balance, this is going to be a big one everybody was talking about. People are using Kriparian's video as the definitive reason as to why Endgame is bad. I get one shot. Yeah, in PoE 1, guess what? You were getting one shot all the time too. You just don't like it here. Generally, the balance in endgame maps was more punishing than intended, which is honestly true. So we've toned down the damage in a number of ways and disabled certain on-death effects where the telegraph was not as clear as it should have been. Yes, that does happen quite a bit. I'm very happy that in PoE 2, they were working on a lot of the visual clarity in the game, which definitely does help in playing the game itself. Granted, the pace does slow down a little bit because of it, but I'd rather have a clearer screen than to try to figure out why I died, having someone clip it on Twitch than playing it at 1 frame per second, trying to figure out exactly what happened. So this is definitely a better move. Maps no longer have additional elemental resistance penalties inherently applied at tier 6 and 11 or higher maps. It is now consistent across all of the endgame. Good. Chaos damage now also scales less aggressively over the endgame. Oh, thank God. That's so good. That is so good. Critical strikes from monsters now deal 40% less bonus damage. Good. Lowered the baseline monster density of breach encounters, primarily by reducing the frequency of the elite monsters appearing. Even better. I'm okay with that. We've disabled the volatile crystals modifier. We'll revisit this in the future pending telegraphing improvements. Good, because it can be kind of tough to see those. Purple explosives created by the volatile plants modifier on where monsters now deal significantly less damage. Who likes the purple plants? Nobody likes the purple plants. Good. Good. The Siphon's flash charges modifier on monsters now drains 10 times less flash charges per second. This was an unintentionally draining way too many charges. This should result in a endgame that is much more survivable than before. We'll continue to address the problematic cases as they arise. I think this is a good thing. The ability to have a better endgame overall is a nice thing. Nobody likes getting one shot. The fact that danger still exists. However, though, I think things were a bit overtuned, which is also a nice thing. Character and item balance. They've made charms on belts sustainably more common and now appear at much lower levels. The symbolism of the modifier now appears from level 23 onwards, of the inscription modifier now appears level 64 onwards. I would like to have more belts that have more charm sockets, please. That'd be great. Electrocute is now 25% harder to build up, but the damage penalty has been removed from the support gem. I'm honestly okay with this because even though it's 25% harder to build up for Electrocute, I would rather have the damage penalty be removed overall. So it is almost like a bit of a balance there, so not too bad. It's more difficult to chain freeze enemies by reducing the amount of freeze buildup applied after a freeze has been applied. Yes, I was able to chain freeze monsters quite a bit on my build, which is definitely worth it. The Hunter's Talisman now grants 1 charm slot. Thank you. The small passive skills leading up to it now grant the stat it formerly gave. The charm helper text has been updated to indicate that you cannot have more than 3 charm slots unlocked so that we can add more sources of it in the future. Oh, that's going to be exciting to see what happens then. Definitely going to be some build breaking things on top of that. For skill balance and support gem balance, they have nerfed quite a few builds. Even my Mercenary Grenadier had their explosion on the gas grenade nerfed. However, though, I think that was kind of necessary, and having the trigger gem skills nerfed pretty much under the ground was kind of rough too. However, though, I think what they're doing is they're going to be nerfing basically one button builds, which really is what it sounds like more than anything. Builds that have multiple buttons to be pressing, like 2 or 3, I think are going to be just fine, because I feel like what they want for PoE 2 is to have major combos to be happening while you're playing the game, rather than just basically walking away from the screen and just having to clear everything on your own. Well, not on your own, on its own. So improvements to rolling slam and all shield skills in the mace section, improvements to various bow skills, especially the skills used to generate frenzy charges, which is good, bone spells and chaos damage over time spells in the occult section, various crossbow skills, especially those at higher tiers. Love to see those improvements. Some of the underachieving quarterstaff abilities as well. They've also had improvements to skill gems where they've done a passover on a few support gems. They've added 2 new supports and removed or lessened the penalties of many others, notably the fire, lightning, and cold exposure supports, which is nice to see. They've gone ahead and added the tremor support gem, which can be used to give up to multiple more aftershocks to skills with the damage penalty. They've added a binding support gem, which can be used to give more damage to the command skills of supported minions. And the fire exposure, lightning exposure, and cold exposure gems no longer penalize damage of supported skills. They now have a mana cost multiplier of 120%. I would rather have something like exposure costing more mana than to have a damage reduction for exposure. I'm then thinking to myself, if I do the math, it's actually more advantageous to not use exposure at all than it is to actually use it because of the damage negation. So this is actually a better move overall, because you can always solve for mana. It's difficult to solve for damage. There are, though, some more notable nerfs, though. Skeletal Arsonist Spirit costs now match the other 2 Skeletal Mages. This should result in a slight decrease in the number of Arsonists at a higher level. You're basically burning everything down, let's be real. A nerf to the damage over time component on the very high level of Tornado and Vine Arrow. They were never supposed to deal damage in the first place, apparently, but they act more as a way to offer skills to propagate damage. I think this is the very important line right here. You're going to be seeing a lot of people be like, why are you nerfing my build? But the thing is, though, like I said, they want to remove one button abilities and one button clear screens. What they want to do is create combinations of skills you can put together to then create massive bursts of damage or damage over time. That's why I feel like one button builds are going to be on the chopping block like trigger skills were. So if you're doing anything that's one button, you're going to have a tough time later on. You might have to get that gold to respec. Magnetic Salvo can now only use your stuck lightning arrows as opposed to those created by your party members. I don't think this is a major nerf. I think people were just abusing the actual magnetic salvo to like just go ahead and just completely cover the screen and then just burst everything down. That's kind of like why they did that. That definitely wasn't abuse overall. So they're going to wind down for holiday season and then do more stuff later on. This is before the actual holiday, and they're putting out a massive patch that will fix a lot of the issues for the holiday time frame overall. This is fantastic. GGG has honestly been one of the better developers I've seen, not only being super communicative, but also providing great feedback from the actual player base and listening to that feedback and making the proper changes. It's not everything that everybody wanted, but however, though, this is going to be a good lane overall to have These updates and these patches basically show that GGG is willing to go ahead and think about what the actual player base is looking at, how they want to play the game, and GGG's own personal vision of what PoE 2 should be. One button builds, your time may be on the chopping block, just giving you guys a heads up. But at the same time, though, that doesn't mean that the game is going to be super slow or difficult or over punishing like everybody thinks it is. And I think when we get to the 2-week mark, everybody gets to Endgame, you're going to be seeing a much more smoother transition to that aspect, and everybody's going to be enjoying the game a whole lot more. I feel, however, though, the first 3 acts of the game, especially Act 1 and Act 2, need to be toned down just a little bit. I feel like it is a big wall to reach over in the first few acts, and then you basically just figure out your build and you just climb over the entire rest of the game. So either they should make everything else more difficult on the ramp up to Endgame, or tone down the first 2 acts a little bit so that way you can get your ideas and your bearings of what you want to do, or provide more currency to players overall throughout those first couple of acts so they can go ahead and start crafting items and gear and skills that they can use to then go ahead and be better off in that end game and on their way to the end game in general, and make it a smoother ride across the board, but also increasing the difficulty a little bit in the last remaining acts. I'm playing a Grenadier Mercenary. Everything explodes on the screen. I basically have a 3-button build. It's pretty awesome. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below on this. Are you happy with these changes? Are you excited about this? What else do you want to see GGG implement? And also stay tuned for a beginner tips and tricks guide coming up rather soon in the next couple of days. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.